Hi, Scorpio, Sun and Rising. This is a video for the transit of Jupiter in the sign of Aquarius. And I discovered after I had done almost all of the other signs, actually, yeah, like 10 of the other signs, that I was combining it with Saturn, not realizing I'd already done Saturn in Aquarius, because we did have an initial short transit of Saturn in Aquarius starting in March of this year, and this year being 2020. So you can definitely check the video for your sign, whether it's the sun or the rising sign, because Saturn is also going into Aquarius in December of 2020. And I'm just going to do Jupiter in this particular reading. So Jupiter, this planet that has to do with, it's like Santa Claus. It's considered a very good influence. And even if there are squares and oppositions and in your natal chart to Jupiter or in the transits that Jupiter is making, it still is considered good. It just might be excessive. It might be a little bit over the top. In this case, Aquarius is your fourth house of home and family. And so it forms a square to your sun or rising sign. And the fourth house, like the first, like the seventh, and the 10th houses, are angular houses. And, this is one of those things that when you're studying astrology, whether you're studying if you're studying by yourself, like me, what's the term? Self-taught, or you're taking formal classes in it. You learn some of these basic terms, and you learn the explanations, but you're a separate entity, and you get to decide whether you agree with it or not. Just because somebody has come up with certain things doesn't mean that you have to go along with that. And one of the things that they say about the angular houses is how important they are to our lives. And yes, you can make the case to a certain degree, but I would dare say that the house that you rule, the eighth house, is super important in its own right. And, the fifth house, where I personally in my natal chart have a stellium, that to me is very important. Love, creativity. So, to say one thing is more important than the other, I think is a bit overstated, but it is supposed to be an important area of life. It's the area that connects you to the domestic side of life. So your where you live, the housing that you live in, your family life. Now this could be your current family, but also your family of origin. The fourth house is ruled by Cancer, and its ruler is the moon, and so it's a water house. And because Scorpio is a water sign, I feel like even though it's, the square is supposed to be a tense angle, I think in this particular case, it really does, it really has something in common with what you are about. And so therefore it doesn't really clash as much as you would think, even though the sign of Aquarius is certainly very different than you. But the house I'm talking about. And so the fourth house can be your roots. It can be the past and your memories thereof. Now, I perused cafeastrology.com looking at their take on all of the different houses that Jupiter's transiting through. And one of the things that they mentioned was the psychological foundation with the fourth house. And they were speaking of an improvement in this with Jupiter, because Jupiter makes things more positive. It expands this area, which means some sort of increase or getting larger. I'll talk about that in a minute when talking about the literal house itself or the household. But it can certainly give a positive boost to your to your environment. But when they talk about psychological foundation, I was kind of thinking about that for a minute. What exactly do they mean by that? And my feeling is that what they're saying is the very, thinking about your past, thinking about your childhood in a more positive light, because this was the foundation of your life, your roots, your past, your home life growing up, your family of origin. And sometimes we have situations where, Pluto going through that fourth house, one of the rulers of Scorpio, or Mars, the other ruler of Scorpio, going through that house. That might upset the apple cart a little bit more. This is more benevolent energy. And not to say that those planets are malevolent, although ask a Vedic astrologer about that and they'll tell you what they think. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not about good or bad. It's about how easy is it, for the person. Is it an easy experience? And I feel like when you have Jupiter, it eases some of those things which can be very touchy. Sometimes, people don't have good memories of their childhood. So you can't reinvent history. You can't pretend that it didn't happen, but you might gain a philosophical outlook over it that makes it all better, that improves that. So, in addition to that, we're just talking about your actual home life experience. If you have a family life right now, maybe you are raising children, and this can make it a more positive atmosphere. One thing they mentioned was about feeling more safer in the home. And this is basically, I'm assuming this has to do with this idea of one's sense of security is connected to the fourth house. It's your nest. So you may feel this tendency to want to nest more than typical. The first six houses of the chart are personal to the individual, and so they're very subjective, and they involve mainly you. And then the last six houses on the top of the chart are you and others. So this is like, so when you're talking about your home base, that is very personal to you. And so this can be an improvement there, and you may be doing it more and less in the world. The opposing house to the fourth house is the 10th house of career. Now that is at the top of the chart. So that, the midheaven, that is the area where other people are seeing you. They're forming a reputation, or they're hearing about you, your status, what your achievements have been, and you're kind of out there. And the fourth house is your nest, and that's you in your own little nest, for lack of a better word, away from the eyes of the public. You may have a greater stability in your home base. And that, I was just thinking about this because there's talk about the nervous system in terms of trauma and how these two things go together. And I never really thought much about it, but I did notice that sometimes when, something is happening, I use the phrase shatter my nerves. And so, especially if somebody has dealt with trauma, and a lot of Scorpios do come from intense experiences in their past, you may have that tendency as well to kind of live on your nerves, or at least sometimes struggle with that sense of trying to get into that more mellow way of being. And that can this can be a time where you feel not only greater stability in terms of your domestic life in general, but in terms of, feeling safe, feeling like when you feel safe, you can plan for the future. When you're in this constant state of like crisis after crisis, you're just living in the moment. You're just trying to survive today. So just kind of like, feeling a lot more maybe nurtured, or nurturing yourself, because the fourth house in Cancer can deal with nurturing like children and things like that, being a parent. And speaking of which, the fifth house relates to, perhaps conceiving children, but the fourth house can be the household and who is in that household. When Jupiter is here, the household may expand. So that might mean that somebody else is coming in, whether it's a new baby, whether you're adopting a child, and of course you can adopt older children, you don't just adopt babies, or taking in a sibling's child or children. You could be having a parent come into your house. And actually, because Saturn is also transiting through Aquarius in the upcoming year, you may have more responsibilities with parents. And so therefore that would expand your household if you take in one of your parents. Now, interestingly, this can even relate to getting a bigger house. You might have financial gain through real estate in general. You may expand your home base, and either add on to your actual house right now or move into a bigger house. You might get financial support from your parents, your family of origin in some way. And maybe, that allows you to buy a bigger house, what have you. So, Jupiter can also be financial gain in whatever house it is transiting, much like Venus. And in this case, this is the fourth house. So it can be from parents or from some kind of real estate that you're selling, that you're making a profit from. So it really is something that can be very nice to have Jupiter go through this particular house. And I say nice because it might even have a tangible effect if there is something especially connected to financial gain. Okay, that's what I have for you, Scorpio. I hope you enjoyed this. If you would like to look at 2021, have a natal chart interpretation, or any other type of reading that I offer, please click on the link below to find out more information. I'm at rainandmoonastrology.com. Thank you for listening. Take care. Bye.